with Creative Cow, and welcome to part 2 of the water tutorial. In the last part, which would be part 1, we saw how we made the water with MoGraph inside of Cinema 4D, and now, as you can see, we're going to see how to composite it and make it look like its final product using a few techniques that maybe you already know, but maybe there's some new stuff to learn along the way. So before we start, I'd like to point out that I still have my chalice full of lemonade. And I haven't really gotten far in it because I recorded the Cinema 4D intro about 2 minutes ago. So I'm going to drink this while I teach you how to do this part, and let's just jump into After Effects and see how it is done. So we're in After Effects. Let's get started and composite this awesome, sweet, mother effing water tutorial. So I've already brought everything we need in, so let's roll through that and see what we're working with. We have our water render straight out of Cinema with an alpha layer right there. If we click on the to view our different channels, we can just do alpha and see that that is our alpha right channel. Go back to RGB for no reason. And we also rendered out a specular pass using Cinema 4D's multipass functions. And so now you can see we only have the specular of the water, and we can use that to get some cool shine or glow or whatever it is that you think needs to happen to water. I don't care if you put freaking noise or turbulent displace on it. It's your decision and stuff. Okay, that's what creativity is. Okay, so we're gonna drag the water. Well, actually, let's go through what we have also left. We also have a picture of clouds that I probably got from cgtextures.com, or I honestly can't remember. I probably Googled clouds in Google Images and pressed the large button, and we got a nice big old picture of clouds. So we're going to use that. We're going to use this full moon right here that I probably did the same exact thing in Google Images. This crazy thing where you just type in words and like magic, it just shows you. And also mountain range. And this is not specific. You can get whichever one you want. I just like that it was nice and straight along the range and a pretty big picture, so we're going to use that. All right, so let's start by dragging the water image sequence into a new composition, just like so. And so it matches our settings, frame rate, dimensions, all that kind of stuff. So cool. That's step 1. Now we can just start doing some pretty simple compositing to kind of get a feel for what we want everything to look like. So let's drag the clouds below the water. Okay, well, that's not exactly what we're going for, but maybe it's what you're going for, a really surreal kind of thing. Probably not, so we're not going to do it that way. Let's press S key and just go ahead and make this sort of fit and bring it up so we get a much better view of the clouds, just like so. Maybe make it a little bit, you don't want to make it too much bigger. So yeah, I'm going to say that's looking pretty good right now. The thing that's actually going to cover up a lot of this is that mountain range. Because, I mean, you can't have this kind of break between the water and the clouds like that. So we're going to use that mountain range to our advantage. So let's go ahead and take care of that. Let's take the mountain range and put it in between the two. And, I mean, you're probably asking yourself, well, why don't I just use the clouds in the mountain range picture? Well, you could, but we're actually going to do a technique where we make the clouds move, but we'll get there after we have everything sort of in place. Let's turn this around by unlinking under scale, unlinking the horizontal and vertical attributes, and just type a negative in front of this 100. And make sure you don't type -10, because that won't be right. All right, so that's with the way we're going to have it, just to match the one I did before. And we can link those back up again. So if we, everything's a little backwards now, but that's fine. And we'll solo that, because what we're going to have to do to get what we want out of it is we're going to have to rotoscope it, which is always our favorite thing to do inside of After Effects. So let's zoom in, take our rotoscoping tool, and I did a pretty, decent one for the render I did earlier, but right now I'm going to wing it. Just probably put this in fast motion. And, well, maybe I won't, because I want to hear myself talk. So we'll just do that and go to the corner. This part doesn't really matter. But we'll move that over and act like I'm on crack while I do it, because that's always fun and makes it seem like a better time. And there's our mountainscape, just right there. Cool. So that's all we really need. If you want, well, no, I'm not even going to say that. I was going to say you could roughen the edges, but I think that's going to look unnatural. I think right now there's a possibility I have some sky in there. In fact, I know I do. So I could, you probably really want to go back in there and get it right. I could also press MM and bring up the mask properties and just take down the exponential a little bit. It's probably going to be fine. Maybe feather it like 2 pixels, maybe even 1. I mean, don't go crazy here, all right? No craziness, just awesomeness. So now we have our mountainscape right there. And in an attempt to stay organized, we can name this mountainscape. And we can name this water. If I can use my keyboard instead of pressing the eject button, water, and make that a not arrow, mountainscape, and clouds. Cool. So that is the basic scene composited right there. Let's give it a little, let's give us something interesting to look at. So first of all, what I want to do before I make the clouds move is I want to color correct them. So let's put curves on them. Maybe undo the mountains for a second so we can see. And we basically need to do a day for night. So what I'm going to do is just take this way down, something like that. But then bring the crush the mids a little bit so you get just a dark background, and but try and keep just a little bit of the brights of the clouds up. I don't know if it's that realistic, but it's cool looking. And then we can take the blue and just kind of bring it down. We want to, before we do an overall color composite, I want to try and match these as best I can, because that's always a good habit to get into, making things match, period, and then you can kind of overall redo the color. So let's bring the green up just a little bit. And it doesn't have to be perfect by any means. I want it to look cool. Maybe even bring these down a little bit more, bring this closer, yada, 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 bring this up. All right, I think that's looking all right for now. Remember, as I think I freaking always say, we can always change it later. So let's do the same thing to the mountains right now. These need to be pretty dark, kind of like our hill that we have right here. So let's take everything down, contrast it down a little bit more. And that's, you know what, I really just don't want to see much on that mountain. I want to see very little detail, and I think that's going to do it for me. So very cool. So if we go ahead and RAM preview right now, yeah, I like the mountains. I'm not too crazy about the sky. I think the overall coloring will help it a little bit. Another thing you can kind of do is tint it right now. Tint the sky and maybe just take it down a little bit just to take some of that color out of it, because there's this really is like very colorless. And so even though there's a very obvious green blue tint to it, the clouds were so bright that we really have to do something drastic to get what we want. So yeah, actually, yeah, let's bring the highs up. I think that looks cool, especially when we put the moon in there. It'll just look cool. You know, it may not necessarily ever be like that, but screw it. We are artistas. We are artistas. Bueno. Okay, so we can curves the water a little bit too, because we made this kind of greenish, and I like that. This can be a little greener. So let's take the blue down. Don't want to do it too much. Yeah, I mean, extremely subtle. Just a little bit greener if we do on, off. I hope that you can see that through this tutorial, but it's very, very subtle. So, awesome. That's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and put the moon in there so we can, you know, get the effect of why the clouds are lit up this way. Sort of a little front / backlighting that doesn't really make any sense. Awesome. Making sense sucks. So let's bring the full moon out there, and it is humongous. So we'll bring it down just like that. Well, we'll bring it down in a minute. First, what I want to do is mask it, and it's a little easier to do while it's nice and big like this. So let's get its center point as close to the center as we can, just like so. That works for me. And let's take this ellipse mask tool and put it in the center of our picture, and while you drag out, hold Shift and Alt, or Alt and then, well, I'll just hold Shift because that's the only thing that seems to be doing anything. Control, not Alt, Control. There we go. So she'll hold Shift and Control. Control is what makes it happen from the center point, and Shift keeps it a perfect circle. So let's do until we get about right there. This really doesn't have to be that specific, but I'll go in and move the mask around a little bit. Another way I'll do it sometimes is just to make a small circle and then go to the mask expansion properties and just up it until I get to where I want. But we did it pretty good this time. So let's bring the scale down just like that to where we want it and bring it up into the sky and turn that off. And yeah, that's looking pretty cool. You may want it bigger, smaller, I'm not sure. 2.5, that's probably a little better. And the other thing that we're going to do is give it a really cool glow. So let's bring glow out here. And I'm actually going to do it on a duplicate of the moon. And we'll just put glow on the top, increase the intensity. And what I also like to do is increase the radius, because that's what really gives it like a drifting glow. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It's actually not drifting enough for me. So maybe what we can do is put a fast blur. And then what we can do is change the transfer mode from normal to add, and that really gives us a lot of glow. So let's, but it's still just way too much. I need it to be blurred out to hell. Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Maybe take the intensity of this glow back down to 1 or something like that. Yeah, I mean, we just need enough glow to show that it's causing this kind of specularity, which is our next topic of discussion. So maybe we can bring this out just even a little bit more. Yeah, nice big glow. Let's take our specular layer of our water right here and bring it over our water and put it on add or screen, whichever one suits you a little better. Add's a little bit stronger. So now we can see we kind of doubled our specularity, and that's kind of cool because if we put our fast blur on it and it is on add transfer mode, we get this really neat surrealism, you know, just kind of a soft focus to our specularity. And I think that's really cool stylistically. It just adds a little more oomph to our project. All right, so let's color correct this thing with an adjustment layer. So layer, new adjustment layer. And what I like to do is take this effect called tritone. What it's going to do is it's going to dictate what are your lows, your mids, and your highs. So I like to put it on, change it to, I don't know, whatever color we're kind of thinking of, something in that range. Maybe make it a little bit darker. Sure. And then when it says blend with original, bring it back up a lot because we only want to change it kind of subtly. It doesn't need to be crazy. Maybe make it a little bit bluer. Yeah, something like that. I think that's really cool. I think the sky's a little too bright, something like that. So crush the blacks a little bit and maybe bring the highs up or down, whichever way you prefer. I'm going to bring them down just a little bit to get something a little more realistic. Awesome. Very cool. So we're almost done. I mean, that's looking pretty awesome. We've got 2 things left to do, and one of them, they're both big and important, but we want to move the clouds. That's going to really sell this. So what we're going to do, and it's a technique thanks to Aaron Rabinowitz, who did a tutorial on it long, long ago, and I've used it ever since, is to take the transform, not the trinaform, which is another great After Effects effect, which I just made up, but take transform and drop it onto the clouds just like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the anchor point and basically, let me explain this before I do it. What we're going to, basically the concept of this is to have it skew from this way to that. So from here to here, but the idea is to skew it, to have the central point be from right here, because you want the skewing to occur. I'm kind of like doing this with my hands now, which you can't see, but it's like we want it to rotate and go at the same time that way, and it's going to make a lot more sense as I actually do it to illustrate it. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the central point, which is also the anchor point, right down at the bottom of our clouds. Now what it did is it moved it up. It translated up in the Y direction. So we just have to go to the position in the transform effect and take the Y position back down to where we want it to be. right about there, you know, just center it back up to where it was. Awesome. So right now, if we skew things, it's skewing them like a seesaw, because our skew axis is going up and down. But if we change it to the side by typing in 90 degrees, if we start to skew things now, you can see it's skewing from top to bottom. But the illusion we're getting is that the clouds are, the closer the clouds are, the faster they move, which is the parallax that you usually see in the sky. So here we have to be extremely subtle. What we want to do is keyframe this. Usually I do it from like -4 to 4, something like that. Really, really subtle. And where is my like cursor, man? Ah, there it is. Let's zoom all the way out. And skew from -4 to honestly either 0 or 2 or +4. I'm going to do +4 just so it's illustrated really easily. So when we do a RAM preview like this, you can just see the clouds moving. And this is a good thing that it's not over the top, because I think if you use this effect over the top, it would look over the top and it would look fake, and you don't want that. So very awesome. The last step we have to do is when I did this, I originally had it as this still shot, but I sort of shook it in a way that a boat might rock on these waves, and it looked so much better. So there's a million ways to do this. The way I'm actually going to do this is just pre-compose all of these layers by just selecting all and doing Shift Control on a PC, Apple on a Mac, C, and so Shift Apple C, Shift Control C, and pre-compose into wave motion. I don't know. That doesn't even make sense because I'm calling the not motion comp wave motion, but you get the idea. So what we're going to do is actually zoom in just a tad. So scale everything up and frame ourselves a little bit. And we're going to go to the position and alt-click on the stopwatch and just type wiggle, and then our parameters here are going to refer to the frequency at which things happen, and then the amplitude at which things happen. So we need a really low frequency and a really high amplitude if we want to look like we're rocking on huge waves. So we'll do like a 0.2 frequency and like a 60 amplitude, something like that. So let's render and see how that goes. And we'll put this on like quarter res just to see what happens. Honestly, it's just not doing it fast enough. So I think maybe we should just bring it all the way up to 1 and see exactly what happens. All right, it's getting to where we want, but it's a little too fast. So let's bring it down to 0.5, put it on half res so we can actually see what's going on, and just let it render for a second. Yeah, I think this is where we want to be, because you can almost see it looks like we're moving with the waves a little bit. And, you can just type in some different numbers and get different results. So if I type in maybe 60, 65 as an amplitude, if you didn't like the way that motion was going, this is probably going to be a little bit different. But you're getting the effect, and you can just play around with this and tinker and eventually get what you want. We might even be able to zoom out just a little bit to get closer to our original image. Yeah, you get a little bit of that mess over there. If you're fine with it going off a little bit, but you need to fill that gap, there's actually an effect called motion tile. And if we go ahead and type that in, it is actually an effect that tiles everything, hence the name. So the way you would do this is just click mirror edges and increase the output width and height. And, you're going to get a little of that tiling, but I don't know. If you watch it, you may not notice. That's the thing. This is all about, I think I notice. I try not to use it because I don't want people to notice, but if you're, if you really like the shot being a little wider and you don't think people are going to see that up top, that it's mirrored, go for it. Why not? What the hell? So yeah, that's compositing this scene, this water scene. It ends up looking really cool and really realistic. And you can play with the colors. If you come back to the adjustment layer, you can make this red instead. And yeah, you can see we're actually maybe you want to increase the effect that has on it. I did it pretty low, which it doesn't really look like it's doing anything. So I don't know. Maybe yeah, you know, that's probably a little better, is a little more consistent. You got your blue, maybe bring it down to about 80, something like that. You just don't, I don't think you want to go overboard with this either unless you're going for a very styled look. So yeah, there you have it, compositing the water scene in After Effects taken from Cinema 4D. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned one or two new things and just had some fun watching it in general. You know, it's always nice to see the thing come out in its final form, and now you know how to get from start to finish on this puppy. So take what you can from it and make some awesome stuff. And stay tuned at Creative Cow for more. There's always stuff to see here. And I'm Neil Barenblatt, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.